93% of people say they value freedom above almost everything else. They romanticize chaos, celebrate rule breakers, and put rebels on magazine covers. The world has decided that loving structure makes you uptight, rigid, maybe even a little sad. But you already knew they'd say that because you've been quietly keeping your love of rules a secret for most of your life. And the truth is, you are not like most people. You never were. You weren't always this way, though. There was a version of you, younger, softer, who didn't reach for a checklist when things got heavy. You used to move through the world more loosely. Maybe you had a phase where you tried to be this spontaneous one, the go-with-the-flow friend who said yes to everything and planned nothing. And somewhere in all that beautiful, exhausting chaos, something shifted. You started noticing that when everything had a place, you could finally breathe. When the meeting had an agenda, you could actually think. When the day had a shape, you felt, for the first time in a long time, like yourself. People around you called it type A. They said it like it was a diagnosis. But you weren't becoming rigid, you were becoming honest about what you actually needed to function. That distinction matters more than anyone gave you credit for. Here's what the science figured out decades ago that the culture still hasn't caught up to. Dr. Stephen Porges, a neuroscientist at Indiana University, developed what's called the polyvagal theory. And in the simplest possible terms, it says your nervous system is constantly scanning your environment for one thing: safety. Not happiness, not excitement, safety. For people whose nervous systems learned early that the world was unpredictable, structure becomes a biological need, not a personality quirk. When you create rules for your morning, your workspace, your relationships, you are not being controlling. You are giving your nervous system the signal it has been waiting for since you were small. You are telling your body, this moment is safe. That is not rigidity, that is regulation. And it started earlier than you probably remember. Think back, not to a single dramatic moment, but to the texture of your childhood. Maybe the adults in your life were inconsistent, not cruel necessarily, just unreliable in the quiet ways that children notice most. Moods that shifted without warning, plans that dissolved, promises that had expiration dates nobody mentioned. Your younger self looked at all of that and made a silent, brilliant decision. If I can control the small things, I can survive the big ones. You built a blueprint. You created internal rules to substitute for the external ones that kept disappearing. And that blueprint kept you safe. It carried you here. It is not a flaw in your character. It is the most creative thing you ever did, and you did it before you were old enough to ride a bike without training wheels. But here's what nobody tells you, and this part deserves your full attention, because this is where the honest version of this conversation lives. That same blueprint can calcify. Research published in the Journal of Anxiety Disorders found that an over-reliance on rigid routines is linked to elevated cortisol responses when those routines are disrupted, meaning the very system you built for safety can quietly become its own source of stress. The CDC's data on burnout consistently shows that high-structure individuals are among the most likely to experience what researchers call control fatigue, the exhaustion that comes from managing everything all the time. The rules that once protected you can, without you noticing, start to run you. That is not a character flaw either. It is physics. Any load-bearing wall, if it holds too much for too long without support, eventually strains. You are not exempt from that. Nobody is. And yet, here is where the story turns, because it always turns. A 2019 study out of the University of Toronto found that individuals with a strong preference for structure scored significantly higher on measures of reliability, long-term goal achievement, and relationship stability than their low-structure counterparts. Not higher in rigidity, higher in follow-through, higher in trustworthiness, higher in the exact qualities that the world says it wants, but rarely knows how to recognize when it's standing right in front of it. Your love of rules is not the obstacle between you and a good life. Research is now suggesting it might be one of the most underrated predictors of one. The world just forgot to write that part in the headlines. So let's give you a better word. Society calls you controlling. The real word is structured. Society calls you inflexible. The real word is principled. Society calls you uptight. The real word is regulated. a person whose nervous system learned to build its own scaffolding when none was provided. You are not someone who can't handle chaos. You are someone who decided very early and very wisely that you didn't have to. And if some part of you is still sitting with doubt, still wondering if this is just a polished way of saying something is wrong with you, then this next part is specifically for you. There is nothing to fix here. There is no version of healing where you come out the other side craving disorder. The goal is not to dismantle what you built. The goal is to understand it well enough that it serves you instead of survives you. You get to keep the structure. You just get to hold it a little loosely now that you know why it's there. So here's what I want you to sit with today. What rule in your life exists to protect you, and which one might now be protecting you from something you actually want? Leave it in the comments. You're not alone down there. Rules kept you safe.